I'm sorry I'm late, guys. Um, I'm Z. This is our Funk Productions podcast. This is a bonus episode, and it's an episode I want to do on forgiveness. Um, if you bear with me just for a moment, I'm going to try to find the file on my phone. If not, I have to read it from my laptop. And because the words around it were so carefully constructed, I got it. Okay, so um, these are my thoughts, and I guess at the very end, we get my sentiment. I have the same show notes noted below this podcast. Um, okay, I'm gonna just read it out. Okay, this is so ridiculous. It's easier to read to people, but when it's an episode like this where it's a mixture of very many things, the concept of forgiveness, right? It's a mixture of our real world experience, as well as almost this. It's attached to this our emotional and psycho spiritual experience. Forgiveness is one of those um, sentiments we experience, or we come to some kind of understanding or gain wisdom into it almost. I think of forgiveness as a gift. Only a few of us ever get to fully experience in this life, and it's the most beautiful gift. And I think that the more we show people how much you remain true to who you are, no matter what they say or do or try, the better things tend to work out for you. But forgiveness is a really very, very important concept, right? Forgiveness. In fact, I titled this Forgiveness, the Forgiveness Imperative, a psychological and philosophical examination. So, hi, welcome to the Self Productions podcast. If you're just tuning in, I am Z. I'm really very shy about reading this out. I did use AI to help me draft this, but it's my idea and my sentiment and my keywords and yeah, my input for the output and a bit of a back and forward. But we landed here. So, on the topic of forgiveness, often evokes, sorry, the topic of forgiveness often evokes a simple, almost sentimental image of letting go. We are told it is a virtue, a kindness we extend to others. Yet to confine forgiveness to this narrow definition is to profoundly misunderstand its true nature. Today I invite you to view forgiveness not as a simple act, but as a complex, intellectual, rigorous imperative, one that is both profound psychologically necessary and a radical philosophical or spiritual approach. To begin, let us first consider the psychological burden of non forgiveness. This is important. It is not merely a fleeting emotion, it is a persistent state of being that holds the mind captive. The psychological literature is unequivocal on this point. Maintaining a state of grievance or chronic resentment is a form of self imprisonment. So you have to let it go, okay? Or else it manifests as a constant state of cognitive rumination, where the mind is perpetually replaying the narrative of a past injustice. This is not merely an intellectual exercise, it is a tangible psychological consequence. You start ruminating, replaying, shoulda, coulda, what if, if only this, if only that, blah, blah, blah. All the games we play with ourselves, right? Self imprisonment. So, replaying the narrative of the past injustice. This is not merely an intellectual exercise, but it has tangible psychological consequences. Chronic anger and bitterness are correlated with elevated stress hormones. A compromised immune system and an increased risk of cardiovascular tissues to refuse to forgive um, is to voluntarily subject oneself to a form of psychological and physiological duress, ceding control over one's inner peace to the very person who caused the initial harm. Forgiveness in this context is an act of self liberation. It is the conscious decision to dismantle the internal prison and reclaim ownership of one's emotions and mental well being. This brings us to the philosophical dimension of the issue. Forgiveness presents a fundamental challenge to the conventional paradigm of justice. Our initial impulse, rooted in retributive framework, is to seek an eye for an eye, a proportional of punitive responses to a perceived wrong. However, forgiveness transcends this simplistic logic. Sorry. It is not an act of condoning the injustice or forgetting the offense, but rather an act of profound ethical sophistication. My favorite word, by the way. It acknowledges the wrong committed, but it refuses to be perpetually bound by it. It offers a path that lies outside the cyclical logic of retribution, where every act of harm begets another. This perspective requires us to engage with a higher form of moral reasoning, one that recognizes the fallibility inherent in a human condition. It is an act of radical empathy, an intellectual leap that allows us to see the offender not as a singular act of malevolence, but as a complex being capable of being in error, just as we are. The philosopher, sorry, the philosophers. Oh shit, and this is live. I can't go back. The philosopher. Thank God no one watches this. Joke's on you. The philosopher Hannah Arendt argued that forgiveness is a core component of human freedom, the only way to break the chain of cause and effect and to start anew. That's a very fancy word for saying for breaking um, generational curses. And it's so simple. Why don't they just tell us that forgiveness is the way? Why don't they just come on, it's so easy. Seek forgiveness and you find your way. So In conclusion, I encourage you to seek forgiveness, not as a sign of weakness, but as a hallmark of intellectual and emotional strength. It is the sophisticated choice to prioritize our own well being over a justifiable anger. It is the ethical choice to break the cycle of harm and to seek a more expansive understanding of justice. By embracing this imperative, we liberate ourselves from the past and open a new pathway to a more peaceful, coherent, and utterly more fulfilling future. Thank you. Thank you all for joining me on this live. With that, I'd like to say I am sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. And I love you. Like, subscribe, and comment. Bonus episode on forgiveness.